Okay, I'm Mark Viergets. My wife Annette and I are the caretakers here, the managers. We've been at this position for about 21 years. Nels kind of touched on a lot of the history of Ranch A, and I'm probably going to give you a little more of the recent history, I guess, or maybe where we're headed. When we came here 21 years ago, the board was a new board. They'd been operating for, I think, about a year or so. It was quite a struggle. When we took this job, they had $800 in the bank, and we were a little nervous about taking the position, as you can imagine. But it's been a wonderful board to work for. They have worked hard to restore the buildings. The buildings were in very bad shape. Everything had been run down, had been let go for so many years. Not a lot of maintenance had been done. So when the board took it over, they had a big task, and they have restored out of their funds, and they are a nonprofit organization. They're funded by the money that we earn here, renting this to groups. We have some rentals down here at the apartments and stuff like that. We have full-time residents that live in there, and then fundraising. And so they've used this money to start to restore the buildings, and they have done quite a bit of work. We have received over the years a couple of grants from the state of Wyoming to do some of the real major things, like some log replacement and what have you. When we took this over, the first things that were done were the buildings. The apartments were gotten ready to rent, and we started renting those to tenants. And Nels touched on the School of Mines is one of our biggest customers. We have been locked into the educational thing for a long time, and just like he said a couple years ago, that got taken off, and now we can. So up to that point, it was all educational groups, and it was academic, business, religion, any group that wanted to use it, and it was educational based, they could. Now we're open to other things. We still cater to the educational groups because they've been very faithful to us. Most of the groups have been with us since the beginning. We've got groups that have been coming here for 21 years. But we are open now to family reunions, whatever. We're kind of open to anything. There's quite a bit of projects in the works. The barn, which Nels will talk to you more about, they're hoping to get something done with the barn and start using that more than right now it's just a mess. You'll see up there, it's just storage. So, but we're hoping to use this more for community events and what have you. But anyway, to maybe just touch on a few of the buildings, give you a little bit of the history of them. The barn you will see, and you'll hear the future of that. This building, as I told you, we rent out to groups and what have you. The apartments down here, and if you'll go back here on the deck and look, there's 4 separate cabins. Now, Nels's dad, Pete, told me the story, and I'll share it with you. And he said that at one time, Moses Annenberg had 7 children. And so he built the facility here, and he had 4 of the cabins either built or under construction, and they were planning on building 3 more of them. And some of them had the foundation dug, what have you. And then he invited his family to come out. And they were from Philadelphia. They didn't like it here. They didn't like the trip out here. They didn't like this rough, rustic setting, and told him they didn't really care if they came back again. Walter did, the son, but the daughters didn't like it, is how Pete told me. So Mo told them to stop construction. And so they had the 4 cabins completed, and the 4 cabins sat there like that until the federal government came and purchased it in the early 60s, and then they added on the whole front and made them into 2- and 3-bedroom apartments with garages, and they were living facilities for the people that worked here. There is, in the basement of this building, there was a full laboratory. It's kind of been cleaned up and but part of it is still under there that the federal government put in here. The federal government also built the genetics laboratory down. That's the first big brick building that you see there that they did fish studies in. And they built a building up the road here that we call the Sawtooth Building, and it's where they had a lot of the hatchery stuff and what have you there. The Pete Smith cabin was, my wife and I lived there for 15 years. And that building originally was the caretaker's house. It was actually broke up into several different small rooms for the servants to live in. It had been remodeled in the early 30s, or excuse me, the early 60s, and some things had been changed. But the downstairs was where they parked the limos. Later on, when we came, it was the shop area. And that has since been remodeled, and that's we rent that facility out too, just like we do this one, but for smaller groups. We're constantly battling 80-year-old plumbing, electrical, everything. The buildings are old. You know, it takes a lot of upkeep to keep things going. You know, we're constantly upgrading, but we're constantly looking for funding to help with that project to keep these buildings in good shape. So anyway, I think that's about all I've got to say. That work? Thank you everybody for coming too. We really appreciate it.